This video was brought to you by the Critical Language Service. To learn more about our Arabic courses taught via telepresence and Skype for schools and homeschool groups, visit our website at www.criticallanguageservice.com.
Okay, now let's go back to الجملة الفعلية and focus on subject-verb agreement. That is, how do we agree the verb to the subject after it? How do we conjugate it? In verbal sentences, of course. So, by now you have seen many examples of جملة فعلية, i.e. sentences that begin with verbs. In some جمل فعلية, the subject of the verb is contained in the verb itself, as in أسكن في مدينة نيويورك. So, we have فعل فاعل in the sentence, and both is in أسكن. So, because this means أنا أسكن, but ألف here indicates the subject أسكن. Same with هل تفهمون ما أقصد. So, do you get what I'm saying? Do you understand me? تفهمون, get is تفهموا, understand, and the واو نون here reflects to you plural. هل تفهمون ما أقصد. Same in نسهر لنشاهد التلفزيون. نسهر, we stay up to watch TV. نسهر, noon here indicates that it's نحن, the subject is نحن, we stay up. And this is what we mean by subject-verb agreement, is when the verb when the verb follows, yes, the subject in gender and in number. And in this case, we just saw how the verb can contain the subject. And in other جمل فعلية, the subject الفاعل is expressed independently and follows the verb, as in لم يسافر الأولاد مع أمهم. Okay, now if we identify the verb is يسافر, and الفاعل is الأولاد. So لم يسافر الأولاد مع أمهم. Another example is يجيء كل أفراد العائلة إلى البيت. So we have يجيء is the verb, and كل أفراد العائلة is the subject, إلى البيت. So the subject comes after the verb. Subject, verb. استمتع الطلاب بالمحاضرة أمس. We have استمتع, the verb. الطلاب is the subject. Last example is تجمع الناس في بيوتهم ليستمعوا إلى الرئيس. So تجمع is the verb, and الناس is the subject. Notice the placement of the subject in these sentences when the verb phrase, so the verb phrase is the whole verb subject is a verb phrase. So when a verb phrase includes preposition like بالمحاضرة في, so because you يستمتع بي تجمع في, okay, the verb comes between the preposition and the verb and its preposition. We have إلى, يجيء إلى. استمتع ب تجمع في. Actually يسافر مع also. يسافر مع. So as you can see, the verb, the subject come between the verb and its preposition. استمتع ب تجمع في. Notice how the verbs يسافر, يجي, يسافر مع, يجي إلى, استمتع ب, تجمع في are all in the singular form, even though the verbs after it are all plural. And this is the rule when the verb precedes the subject and it's not actually linked or does not contain the subject. So when the verb precedes the subject, even though the subject is plural, the verb is always singular, and that is also true when it's not contained in the verb. So how can I explain this better? When the verb is before the subject, and even though the subject is plural, the verb is always in singular. الأولاد is plural, the verb is singular because the verb comes before the subject. So it doesn't agree with it in number. It agrees with it in gender. So الأولاد is masculine and يسافر is masculine. يجيء masculine. كل أفراد العائلة أفراد is masculine. استمتع masculine. طلاب is masculine. الناس masculine. تجمع masculine and singular. Now let's compare some sentences. Remember we said that جملة فعلية is the جملة that starts with a فعل. Let's compare some sentences like, and just so you know, the verbs in the light blue sentences precede their subjects, while those in dark blue follow their subjects. As in, الأولاد لم يسافروا مع أمهم. So this is the verb follows the subject, whereas here لم يسافر, I just moved the whole thing. لم يسافر الأولاد. لم يسافر الأولاد مع أمهم. لم يسافر, the verb precedes the subject. Same for كل أفراد العائلة يجيئون للبيت. So we have the subject كل أفراد العائلة, and then the verb يجيئون, whereas here you have يجيء with كل أفراد العائلة. Same meaning, same sentence, just the placement of the subject and the verb differ. الطالب استمتعوا بالمحاضرة أمس, and here we have الطالب is the second word, whereas استمتعوا is the verb, the placement differ, same meaning. So الناس تجمعوا في بيوتهم ليستمعوا إلى الرئيس. You have الناس, this is the wrong, yep, I was testing you. I have الناس are the subjects, and the verb is تجمعوا, and here we have تجمع, the verb, الناس is subject. So we said that both sentences mean the same, just different in the difference is in the position of the verbs, and this is what we call جملة فعلية versus جملة اسمية. So جملة فعلية are the light blue ones, and it's called فعلية because it starts with a فعل, and the dark blue sentences called جملة اسمية because it starts with a noun, with an ism, and that's the only distinction. Although الجملة الفعلية has special plural and singular agreement rules, we saw this before, when it depends on the position of the verb. vis-a-vis the subject, the verb should agree with its subject in gender. For example, رفضت النساء المصريات قرار الحكومة الجديد في موضوع حقوق المرأة. So the Egyptian women refused the government's new law concerning women's right. As you can see here, النساء المصريات, the subject is feminine, so the verb is in the feminine. It's singular because it precedes the subject, so it doesn't agree with it in number, but it has to agree with it in gender. Same for حصلت بعض الطالبات على منح للدراسة في الخارج. So بعض الطالبات, حصلت طالبات, feminine, so it agrees with it, but it doesn't agree with it in number. And also here إن تبادلت الحكومة السعودية والحكومة الصينية في الأسبوع الماضي عدة رسائل دبلوماسية. You have تبادلت because حكومة سعودية وحكومة صينية is feminine, but it's considered as plural because it's two entities. تبادلت didn't take the number, but it took the gender. So the rule was, if the verb precedes the subject, the verb doesn't agree with number, but it does agree with gender. Thus, when the subject of a جملة فعلية is a non-human plural or a human feminine plural, the verb must be feminine singular here. So non-human plural like حكومة, or human feminine plural like نساء, طالبات, the verb must be feminine singular here. صبري لله